Thank you so much. And I really want to make this interactive if possible. So, as people are reacting to what I'm talking about and they do think it's a little wild and crazy, or I couldn't do that, or they wouldn't let me do that, we can talk about it because I've had some pretty big companies cut me some wide berth and slack to do this stuff. With everything I'm going to share with you, there's an elegant way to do it, there's an on brand way to do it, but we're going to have a lot of fun. So, I called this backflips, base jumps, and wingsuit flight. Now, once I went to Mammoth and I skied the top of the cornice, which is a quadruple black diamond, and I want to tell you, I thought I was going to die. I looked down, I'm like, I'm not going to make it. And I sort of snowplowed until it became a triple black diamond. I don't know how I lived, to be honest. I was in my teens and I was very, very brave. That is the closest in my whole life. I fell out of a river raft, but I've never backflipped, base jumped, or done wingsuit flight. But you know what? Some people feel like that when they cold call a CRO. And one thing I do for fun, I have a Discord community which is called the Sales Borgs, like a cyborg and a salesperson. We just cold call. We do parallel assisted dialing on like a Friday at 4 p.m. out of Connect and Sell or Orem, and I call 200 CROs with human verified data at once, and I just let the room, let 20 or 30 people watch me fail, watch me get rejected, watch me get brush offs, and it's a lot of fun. So let's see if this thing works. I'm Justin Michael. After 20 years in the business, I have my own consultancy called Justin Michael Consulting, and I do fractional RevOps stuff. It's a lot of fun. Um, One of the first things I wanted to show you is visual prospecting, and I led an entire webinar on this subject. So if you're interested in it, please get back to me. What started to happen is I was at a tech company in Seattle, and there's this awesome chief revenue officer, and he did a 350-page slide deck for the sales kickoff. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. So I went through all 350 pages because I was going to get ramped up and go set emails. And inside, on like page 320, was a Venn diagram of the competitive landscape. And it's funny, I'm wearing my Kachava hat that matches my diagram here. I love them. They're in northern Idaho. Check them out. Analytics. I started to study neuroscience and sort of Dave Hoffield and the science of selling. And I found this research that your brain processes images 60,000 times faster. They've always said a picture is worth 1,000 words. So what's really this is the craziest thing that I could teach anybody. I always say if I got hit by a bus. Now, luckily, there's not a lot of buses around here. Rim shot. I'm in Southern California, a little beach town.
But
Um, but bump bump. um, yeah. So here's the big thing that's really crazy. We as children we learn to read all these little marching ants, right? We try to figure out what these symbols mean, and still as adults, when we get tired at night, we're reading a book, start to get drowsy. It's hard to process this, but imagery just goes straight into the neocortex, right? So knowing that, it's kind of nuts because most of outbound email marketing templates sequencing, it's all about what do you say. I've called this heuristics. What are the pieces of the email, the opener, the illumination question, all this stuff. But the issue is the brain of the prospect is just trying to parse and figure out what these words mean. It's different to everybody. So I really got involved in visual prospecting, and I started to create these Venn diagrams of competitive landscapes. I sent one Venn diagram through my own Gmail to the chief digital officer of McDonald's, set the meeting within 5 minutes, forward it, boom, meeting. Then I sent it to the VP of mobile at Home Depot, and I was just sitting there in my office up in Seattle. He called me on my phone within 3 minutes and said, "Pitch me." This is a person I prospected for 5 years, and I thought, okay, I'm onto something. I had my like flux capacitor moment, and I find a place called Dog Patch Advisors later on when I'm working in Silicon Valley in a company to build this, and they're writing code. They're doing visuals and pulling code. Josh Braun's doing some cool stuff around this too, using images that dynamically change per email, maybe their logo or something on the site. Um, so creating these Venn diagrams, you're taking a competitor map. You're saying, we compete. We're Acme. We compete with Beta and Zeta and Big Corp. And here are the feature sets we compete on, and here in the middle. So in this case, Kachava is providing a converged, unified solution that does a little bit of all those things. And I would send this in an email and say, what are the implications of this? Or do you agree with this? And it's so incredibly provocative and unlocks so many interactions that I was starting to get some really interesting things like, I don't agree. The Ven's wrong. Let me make it for you and send it back to you, and for me, it's all about interactivity. So this is the first pillar of what I would say it's a bit of a base jump because it's a lot of work, right? You got to go create one of these. How do I create it? And I went through a whole course of like 45 minutes on a blissful prospecting, Jason Bay. He's great explaining how to build one of these. It's not as hard as you think. In fact, if you make it ugly and you make it and you get it wrong, you're still going to get responses. Even more. The first version of this was just a piece of lucid chart with some ragged logos on there, and marketing cleaned it up. And I use this in my demos with love because I like to promote. It's a great company, and go check them out. Any questions on that? I don't know if I can see the chat, but maybe someone can let me know if there's a question.
No questions quite yet, and I'm
Okay.
keeping my eye out there. So chat, let us know. We're gonna go back
Yeah.
and forth with everybody. Are you doing visual prospecting? What have you done that has worked really well? Victor is asking, doesn't it affect your deliverability?
Good question. So that was a weird test. So sometimes I'll sideload a Gmail, or I'll send out of a personal account because things have gotten a little wonky with how many emails are coming out of the company, and I want to test for a DKIM and SPIF and DMARC. And so, I've been very involved in appointment setting and mass sending of emails, but in a concerted and careful and compliant way, similar to Aaron and Colin and Sarah and the folks on the phone. You want to nest imagery on the second or third touch, right? When you're getting deliverability, your first email shouldn't even have a signature or links. But once you're in, touch 2, 3, 4, or deeper in the sequence, it's okay to use imagery. There's a company called Get Cloud App, which you basically think about in your best technology demo. Take that wow moment. Maybe it's like a piece of the UI or UX, or there's that part of what you do. And it's funny, you're thinking, don't feature sell, but there's usually something in your deck. It's a visual, it's a walkthrough, and you can really quickly screen cap that, get it under 100 kilobytes, and put it in line. So I have a lot of theories of everything. One of them is I come from old school SEO and conversion rate optimization. You're never leaving my email thread ever. I will never link you out of an email thread ever. So if I'm going to link to the Gartner white paper, I will go to the white paper. I'll read the whole thing. I'll pull out one thing that I think is impressive. I'll say, according to the Gartner white paper, and I'll link it in line, or I'll just take a Shift Command 4 and I'll stick it in line in the email. The other huge thing I'm a proponent of is like holographic sequencing and geometric shapes. And what this means, executives have very short attention spans. This has been called executive ADD. I sure do. If I'm getting a sequence of 12 touches over 30 days, I finally will go, okay, I'll look at it. And I look at touch 11, and touch 11 says, hey, what did you think of the white paper on touch 9? Or it's when you're all sitting around watching Friends and everyone's laughing because Phoebe did something. I'm like, I haven't seen every episode of Friends. I have no idea why this is funny. I lack the context, right? So each step of a sequence should inherently mentally link out intrinsically to the full sequence. And that's like a holograph or a fractal where if you zoom in on it, it's the same shape. So touch 7 can set, but touch 2 could set, but touch 13 could set. So this is the geometric piece that I bring to my methods. It's just a lot of fun. You see what we're triggering? We're triggering the left and right half of our brain. Everything's firing, right? I've heard about wine. Like the reason you clink the glasses is to trigger the fifth sense. You got touch, taste, feel, sound. So what you're trying to do here is hit all the senses, and it's really important to be visual. So I could go on forever. I could do a whole hour on just this. I won't bore you or cure insomnia. Let's talk about this. Really controversial. Yeah, were there any more questions on that one? Should I stick here for one more second? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, we got somebody saying don't need to ask him any more questions to boost his already huge ego. From Mark Mack.
Oh, he's a friend of mine. He's helping me with my ego issues. He's been training me on cold calls. He's in my mastermind.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, if you can get to know Mark Mack, he's a really smart prospector. He's bringing a lot of value. Look, the thing is about visuals, you don't have to make this hard, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Um, you can literally just screenshot something in the deck already and put it in a touch and A/B test it, see how it works. Let's go on to the next one. FaceTime drops. So this is actually not something I did. So again, it's a base jump, it's a wingsuit, you're at the top of a ski mountain and you're going to do a backflip and deploy a parachute on skis. This was done in James Bond. It's a classic scene. Um, so a FaceTime drop, what this is you have an iPhone and you reverse look up the email address of the prospect and you link in onto their FaceTime. Now it's sort of a can spam gray area because you're not making a call, you're initiating an internal app connection. It's also incredibly invasive. I put this up online because Chris Rokas in my group did it. And I can prove to you I didn't. I have an Android. So it wasn't me, in the words of Shaggy. Um, the thing is, like, it's how crazy is this to take a president or VP of sales and just drop in on their FaceTime? This is an intimate family type thing. But he drops in and I think he's in cardboard or packaging, and this executive goes, "Really?" Like, WTF type thing. And he goes, "Look, it's COVID. I'm just trying to have some, human interaction here. I'm just giving this everything I got." And the guy goes, "I'm listening." And he booked the meeting. And I think when he got face to face with the C-level, he kinda was able to remain poised and not backpedal. We talk about a lot about equal business stature on cold calls, right? So if you're gonna do a technique that's this crazy, this is beyond my comfort zone. I just wanna be clear. But the reason I highlight it is because for you, your FaceTime drop might be, calling a GM or calling a VC or a board member. It might just maybe just like calling a prospect that you feel like you're not ready to call. Like, I've been in startup companies like, our perfect client is Facebook, but we're not ready to do a deal with Facebook, right? So, but you might want to, right? So this is just encouraging you to get out of your comfort zone. If you're ready to do FaceTime drops, I mean, Brandon Bornanson at Seamless.ai, the CEO, he says he's been trying it. There's other people that are might have been in market with this already. I've never seen it anywhere. The post got like 200,000 hits and went nuts, and people were just like, "Ah, Justin, you are so sleazy." I'm like, Android. All right, next one. Any questions on the FaceTime drop?
No, I think just commenting on the Pixel.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
call this the burner phone.
yeah,
It's funny
totally.
because one of my clients is in Medellin or Medellin, and I'm
Mm.
always like closing the door on Friday night and calling Medellin. So that's neither here nor there. It's this beautiful country, but I have a very weird lifestyle in life. Look, I'm gonna go. I'm blowing this out of the water. This is the big trade secret. So I've been at scale on this platform. Friend of mine, Arthur Leopold, was the top fintech seller ever at LinkedIn for financial services. If you know him, you know what a rock star he is. In the Empire State Building every morning at 5 a.m., crushing it, selling Sales Navigator, one of the best salespeople I've ever seen. He comes out with this as the chief operating officer. This is one of the craziest idea, right? And it took off because in COVID, like, what do actors do? Like, I don't know if you saw like Knives Out. I mean, you just kind of do the movie all in one house and test everybody for the fever. Like, it's kind of hard to go on location in Italy and do car chases during C-19, right? So all these actors have this existential issue, and they're sitting in Cameo.com, and you won't believe it, but these prices are real. You can have Bethany Frankel um, from The Real Housewives read your prospecting email. So we had Bob Saget, do one. It was incredible. I guess it turns out the guy loved Full House. We saw on his Facebook that he liked Full House, but he really did. He grew up with Full House. He showed his mom that Bob Saget, and Bob Saget's on there, saying his name. That was my college name. Hi, I'm Bob Saget. It was like really hilarious. I had one done as Frodo. Um, did one with Juicy J, little risque. I did one with Mike Ditka, the Bears, and so but Russ Hanneman, who's not on this one though, if you love Silicon Valley, is a lot of fun, and that one got a little not safe for work. So you do want to vet these. These are not G-rated. These are actors, and they're having fun, and they're comedians, and they're saying whatever they want to say. So there's not a lot of control over the message, and you can get Richard Dreyfuss for $1,000. You can get Charlie Sheen. You can get Snoop Dogg. Uh, and soon this won't be necessary, right? Because we'll have deepfake. And so during a call like this, I'll have a Zoom show and I can just deepfake into Chewbacca, or I can become Robert De Niro. But then the government will obviously restrict that federally and say, this is my AI. This is Justin Michael's AI deepfaking. And you'll see right now already on YouTube and through the gaming community, there's several celebrities that are on TikTok that are synthesized faces that are AI derived deepfakes. So this will move away from being a channel for celebrities when we can just use computer vision and AI and neural networks to synthesize celebrities. But now I'm moving to 2035 and 2050, so it's less practical. Pricing, a lot of these are big. You're saying I can't afford it. The sports stars, a lot of the B-level celebrities, $25 a minute of them saying anything you want. So if you have a big sports fan, you'd be shocked the amount of cameos you can get under $50. It has tons of wow factor. I remember just trying to convince a company to let me send a FedEx for $35, and you could have, right, like you could have. I'm not devaluing some of these celebrities. I mean, I love Tom Arnold in True Lies. I mean, but yeah. So actually, so I have this SDR league thing that I'm involved in, which is sort of like a cage match where two SDRs square off and see how they can handle rebuttals. We stream it to Twitch and then have a Discord, and there'll be sponsors. And so I had the founder of UFC Couture, the Natural, introduce me as I'm training for the fight, right? I'm like in my backyard, my chickens like Rocky, and I'm like making my calls, and I'm taking on Ryan Reisert. He's like the king of cold calling, and so we have like the jousting match, and I'm getting off the script here, but you can do this, and it's affordable, and it's at cameo.com. Any questions on this slide?
Man, I'm lost in cameo.com. I'm like, geez, $50 I can get Zach Cassian, hockey player from Vancouver to yeah. I was like, if I'm
It's
prospecting in
fun.
Canada, this is, I think this is the missing piece of like, you look at somebody's LinkedIn, you're like, oh, I saw you, you went to this school, or you're in this area, like, go Bucks, or go this, go that. It's like, now this can take that to the next level, and not just comment that, but like use that knowledge, use that information to like, man, match up some of their interests to one of these celebrities. That'd be incredible. And for $50, $100, dialing into a huge account like that, dang.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So the conversion rate has been insane. I'm getting 8 out of 10 responses.
Yeah.
I have a
So
question,
yeah,
Justin, about this tactic. Where would you like? At what point in the sequence would you use this? Is this your first touch? Is this the fifth touch? When do you use this?
I think this is a way you break into accounts that would never really talk to you because of the amount of ROI. Like a net new account usually is worth a ton. That's not to say if you had a deal that's stalled, you might not use it. It's when there's a high leveraged need, right? You got a 7-figure deal, it's on the fritz. For some reason, it's gone into a black hole. You know, your competitors rooting around in there. Maybe you send one of these. And it just gets this, it's human nature. Like someone who received this just like, really? Like, they just kick out of it. It just makes them feel like a kid again, you know? It's really out there right now. It'll become more common, but, 9 out of 10 people haven't seen this, and it still has a novelty. I was using this primarily to break into impossible accounts that never responded before, and
Mhm.
8 out of 10 responses on that. All this conceptually comes out of a Stu Heinecke basis of contact marketing and how to get a meeting with anyone, where he's a cartoonist for the Wall Street Journal, and he does a big board and a full cartoon with no logos and sends it by courier, and they get it, and he's getting 100% response. I'm like, yeah, if I was a gifted cartoonist for the Wall Street Journal, I could do that. And ever since I met Stu Heinecke, I've been, what is my inner Stu Heinecke? Well, I'm gonna get, you know, some celebrity, like I'm gonna get Flavor Flav to read you a prospecting email. That's pretty cool. That's out of the box. And so again, to me, it's like wingsuiting. It's kind of like when you watch a Red Bull video and you're like, okay, this guy's gonna skydive from space. And it's just like, what? And everybody puts it down and looks at it. Like I'm trying to create pattern interrupts and do things with omni-channel approaches that are just totally wildly out of the box, because then my chance to break in is very high. There's also been opportunities set out of this. There's been business that's closed out of this. So it's not just a, look cute cats and snorkels. I don't think it's a gimmick or a novelty. If the message is there and you align the personalization, relevance, and timing, you know, like Colin just said, like if you get the right celebrity, like if you have a huge sports fan and you send them the exact player from a team they like, that's pretty awesome. To find that, look on their Twitter, look on their Facebook. It'll be pretty obvious. Sports people are easy. They have an easy tell. In fact, we had a whole SDR program dedicated to sports. So like one of the most common subject lines was "Roll Tide." Next one, or any more questions on that?
How much was Randy Couture?
I don't know. I have fans doing this stuff. A fan did my Photoshop robot on Fiverr, and a fan paid for Randy Couture. So I'm actually reaching a level of UGC where I'm not even powering a lot of my own content. Um, yeah, so I don't know.
Beauty. How much? How
I,
much for Justin Michael cameo?
oh, I mean, man, priceless? I don't know. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Mark Max, like, dude, the ego, calm it down. No, seriously, it's really humbling to have the sport that I do, and it's really because the reason I'm doing all this is not because I'm awesome at sales. It's that these ideas, if you unleash it, if you're stuck and you're frustrated and you can't get through, everything in this webinar today is something you could try. And if they won't let you try it, just be like, hey, Aaron Ross and Justin Michael gave this webinar. So what would you allow me to try? You'd be amazed. I think they'll get a kick out of it and maybe let you do it.
Solid. We're good to go.
Okay. Cartoons and QR codes. So I talked about a little of this early. About 13 years ago, I pulled a stunt and it worked. I was selling QR codes in a world where people were putting QR codes on their billboard. This guy, Ryan Chisholm, in my group, he has his Zoom background with a QR code that then triggers his LinkedIn. Super cool. If you're watching, thank you. So what we did was you're trying to get to the Jim Henson Company, and we built these. We printed sugar cupcakes. So it's even cooler than the example. It was all these Kermit the Frog cupcakes, and in the eyes were QR codes. And when you hit the QR code on the cupcake, it triggered a video compressed MMS message that triggered to your phone playing the Muppet movie. And so we delivered by courier these cupcakes to the executive at Jim Henson Company, and we did get the meeting. And this was so far ahead of its time. So this is 2007, 2008. I mean, at that time, I was still calling agency almanacs with a whiteboard. I was doing, 100 call days where I get in at 3 a.m. and drink Red Bull. Like, we didn't have sequencers. It was old school. Uh, but we still needed this method. So I talked to, who was it? The CMO of Science without the S, Eric Quanstrom, formerly Kite Desk. Great guy. He's like, if you send me foodstuffs, like if you send me yummy treats, I'm going to get the meeting. So yeah, if you want to talk to Eric, tell him, just send him a treat and tell him I sent you. I have a good question to the hosts. What would I send you that would make you take a meeting because you'd just be so stoked on the gift, even if it wasn't relevant? Could be a
Oh, good
sweet, could be
question.
sport.
Good question. Colin, you go. I'm gonna think.
This is like a wish list kind of thing. I'd say hockey tickets, but probably not super relevant right now.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
would do something like musical. Like if you, even if you're not a musical person and you like are bad at music, if you wrote me a song that was like, literally 10 seconds long and gave it a sing in a video, I would 100%, I'd be there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There's an SDR. So there's Rajiv Nation, who's done a parody of Will Smith, and what's his original show? Man,
Of
it's
Will
killing me.
Smith,
Yeah, what was the
Fresh
first Will
Prince.
Smith? Yes, yes, the Fresh Prince song. He does that, and he switches it up with like all B2B
Hmm.
stuff. Can't think straight. Too many cupcakes and cartoons and craziness. But
That's fair.
there was the singing SDR. She was lovely. I don't know what she's up to now, but she did the song thing. So that's a good note to self. On the right of this slide is something hilarious. This would look really good in my office. I mean, this is the kind of satire where a bunch of executives looking at an uptrend graph. The Stu Heineke stuff is you want it to be personal, but you don't want to have any logos on it, and you want it to be kind of evergreen because then it's just more universal and timeless in a way. So yeah, does anyone have any questions on pulling off this strategy?
All right, let's go have a look at chat. Let's have a look. I think everybody's like me and they're stuck in cameo.com. So let's pull everybody back because I'm like, oh, they got SNL. They got people from The
I know.
Office there.
There's a lot
Everybody's
of pressure. I mean, knowing that this is like an Aaron Ross derived webinar, I'm like, I have to bring my A game. I did work on this deck. There's kind of 5 webinars in one because I wanted to do like shock and awe.
totally.
And so I got really, so I've delivered some of this before, but I went to the next level. Want a remote control? Sorry to see you go dark, right? Or wouldn't it be sweet if I got a foot in the door and there is a shoe that is a Michael Jordan shoe, but it's a cake? Or the drone, you send a VR drone. You're like, here's your free drone. Take the meeting with me. If you want the remote control, right? So some of this is old school. The Gong campaign was genius. It was implemented with Sendoso. It got an 80% response rate. They sent it to all the prospects that had gone dark and said, is there a reason you went dark? Here's the lantern with the Gong logo. So simple. So now we have analytics on this, right? So you can send it through Sendoso. It integrates right with your Salesforce CRM, and you can see the analytics on that. I recall I was at a trade show in Las Vegas, and this is another stunt that's worthy. So I had a drone, a VR drone in one hand, and a fishbowl in the other hand. And it was back in the booth days, and I walked to every booth and I said, "Do you want this drone?" And like held it up. It was like a $400 nice drone. I don't know like what you would need it for. I guess you put on the VR goggles and then you fly the drone, and then you can look from a bird's eye view as if you're up in the drone. So walked the whole conference. My competitors, I remember, they're like, this guy, what a loser. He's got his fishbowl. Like, people are looking at me like, feeling sorry for me for going around with a fishbowl. But I got 900 business cards. I got every person's business card in the entire room. And, like, for those of us who are trying to get opt-in emails and trying to get lists, I mean, it was nuts. And, as a matter of fact, the person who won the raffle was the most qualified prospect. Can you believe this? How
Wow,
corrupt.
what a surprise. I know, and I'm trying to remember whose story it was, but somebody they went around like it was like an enterprise was it enterprise software. It was somewhere with like the Fortune 5 where Fortune 500 were in attendance, and he walked around with a tiny bar of gold and said like did the same thing. Like if you enter the draw, you're going to win this tiny bar of gold. And the craziest thing happened when he got everybody's business cards in. The most qualified prospect won that tiny bar of gold, but he had so many business cards because like who else is handing out? It was probably must have been like $1,000 worth of gold.
That is wild. Yeah. So these stunts have been going on forever, but it's just about deploying. It could be as simple as sending coffee cards for $5. Somebody takes the call and doesn't get back to you. Send them a coffee. Say, here's a coffee on me. Like, it could be very little things. It could be very inexpensive things. It could be handwritten notes. It could be paperless posts. The truth of the matter is, for every 1,000 people doing prospecting, maybe one in 1,000, one in 5,000 is even personalizing the email. So if you're going to get into any of this stuff, you're on Arcturus of differentiation, and they're gonna buy from you. So I was actually posting about video prospecting, and this girl got up and said, "I've done 5,000 video emails." And then her colleague came across and said, "I've done 10,000 video emails." So, I mean, there are people out there pushing the lunatic fringe of these technologies and these sort of base jumps. And if you're listening or you know someone who's doing that, please send them to me. Any questions on deploying contact marketing?
I'm just lost on the foot in the door with that the cake. That would
Yeah.
I'm going to change my answer from hockey tickets. If you sent me a shoe or a shoe cake and said I'm just trying to get my foot in the door, I'd 100% give you unlimited time for a demo.
Well, I guess one of the stories I read is they baked the cake into the shoe. I'm sorry, they baked the shoe inside the cake. I was like, "That's a little." I wouldn't
Oh,
do that. And
you
then
don't want to get
there are
halfway through eating a cake and find a shoe. That's
not very
brutal.
sanitary. Yeah, and so, there are a lot of sneakerheads, so that's kind of a cool gift. I mean, I know people who literally, like, get up at 3 in the morning to get a specific shoe. That's more prevalent than you'd think in some of the, advertising technology industry.
I've seen the lineups. I used to when I rode my bike into the office, and I'd be going in at a crazy early hour, like 6 in the morning, and there'd be 50 people lined up in front.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
you if you get a sneakerhead, like, do this, like, do something shoe related, something like Air Jordan, like, even pop for a nice pair of shoes that's like, $200, because if it's a sea level, it's funny, like, the higher up I went in tech, the more casual I became. I finally met with this gaming company worth billions, and I was wearing my Spike Lee Air Jordans and some shorts. I went in the room, I put my feet up, he goes, "Nice shoes." And I was like, "Yeah, that's awesome." It's really weird. You think it could be more formal. First 10 years in mobile, I wore a tie almost every day,
yeah.
for a South African conglomerate, and it was pretty conservative. But again, know your prospect. If they're into sports, if they're into sneakers, you can see their social media. There's so many tells, and then be willing to invest a little. Because I mean, think about it: the amount of money you spend on dinners and conferences and webinars and sponsoring, your company's probably spending like 25 grand on some of this stuff. So like a $200 gift, and also be careful if they're publicly traded, because you do have minimums like under $25. I once met with the U.S. Postal Service, and I don't think I was even able to buy him a coffee. So you do need to know, but you can still be thoughtful, right? A handwritten note or a personalized message. There's free things that you can do for publicly traded companies that they'll appreciate. You don't have to necessarily, like, finance the ski trip.
Since we're talking about things that you shouldn't do, Mark Mack was suggesting that sending a customer a blunt because you got to be so high not to get on the phone with me.
I am in California, so it's a little easier to talk about that. It is funny because one of the cameos I had made had sort of themes around that, but we were sending in San Francisco, so we were good to go. So I love it, Mark. Thanks for providing some color and laughter on this webinar, which is already so conservative and normal, right?
Christine
Uh,
is saying I'd send a video back of me eating the cake, going, "Well played."
oh, okay, yeah. So we did do this thing at the last company where my colleague's husband is a bartender and couldn't go to his bar. So he launched this thing called boozyninja.com, and he shows up to their apartment in a ninja mask with an apron and like tools for mixology that look sort of like samurai swords, and then he makes these smoking drinks and all these bespoke cocktails for you at your home.
Nice.
So Boozy Ninja, if you find the website, I'm not even sure how to spell it, but I just thought it was genius. Love to support him, supporting the bartenders out there. Suddenly don't have a place of business, so good idea. Um, this is really out of the box. So Strava has 20 million members, but Strava has a super high penetration of C-level executives. I would venture to say there's more C-level executives on Strava at the very top of the C-suite than even LinkedIn. At the actual CFO, CEO level, this group is super athletically inclined and they're on Strava and you can add them and be like, "Hey, let's compare our ride scores." What you're seeing here is really creative also. Some people have been riding routes to create specialized maps. There's some for like Black Lives Matter, there's some for like a giraffe or for different charities and causes. And this is a real map of someone riding in a paint by number. I just thought that was cool.
100% fun fact. This guy's actually probably an hour and a half, 2 hour ferry ride from me. He's in Victoria in British
Oh,
Columbia.
really?
I follow this guy on Strava. So
Yeah.
validation.
I
100% of
love
the C-level executives named Colin on this video call are on Strava.
Okay, so Colin himself is on Strava,
You
and if
got
you
it.
want to compete with him in feats of strength, like the gladiators, I did spend my summers as a child in Ashland, Oregon, and Victoria on the island at the Empress. So I am
Oh, nice.
Canadian by association. Have deep appreciation. I've had a 100% track record with Canadian business, and you have to be a little bit more buttoned up in Canada. You've got Castle. You can't just you can't blast. You got to get some approval. So this is maybe a good idea of a way, either use LinkedIn or go on the exercise side. Does anyone have any questions about the Strava approach?
Has anybody ever hit somebody else up on in Strava? I know I've strategically joined a couple of cycling groups that are based in the Bay Area, like San Francisco Bay Area, for when I go down there and I want to meet up with people. I can look and I can see who's going on rides and then hit people up that way. It's a pretty effective way to network if you're going to a new spot. Mark's asking, does it matter if you cycle or not? I mean, it depends on like if the prospect, like if you're showing up and you're trying to prospect somebody and you've got no rides posted and no followers, you're not following anybody, it's pretty clear that you're just like, that's not going to resonate. It's like, oh, you just made a profile to prospect to me. But if you got some interesting rides, or you're like, hey, let's go for a run, if you run, because Strava is cycling, predominantly cycling and swimming, or cycling and running, but I also log my swims in there as well. So hopefully that helps, Mark.
Yeah, so great question. I think it's about authenticity of personalization. If you love sports and they love sports, that's why that personalization locus worked for so long. Because I'd work with these big SDR teams and they were truly fanatical for their college that they just came out of. Like they were just Buckeyes all the way, like just, bleeding their colors. And so when they would contact, they would just prospect specifically anyone from a certain university, and all their touches were football related. And they got into all like the statistics and the stuff. And it works because if you go deep enough in sports with sports fanatics, it's like its own world. So, like, actually, I always give the example of the executive who's sitting in his office and he has this kayaking trip picture and this fish. It's not his family and it's not his fish. He's just trying to, Tommy boy the executives, and everyone will come in and be like, "Hey, I love river rafting," and they like, that's so they test you, right? So you do want to be authentic. You want to be an actual athlete here, but if that's not your bag, if you're like a bird watcher or a fly fisherman, like Lee Bartlett is a master fly fisherman who wrote the number one bestseller. He was like a top fintech seller in the UK. Um, there's micro communities and micro social networks and places where you can be excellent for bizarre things on the internet. And that could be B2C, that could be Instagram, that could be a wide variety of platforms. But when you personalize because you actually care about it also, for example, I landed a meeting with the C levels at Peloton. I've had the Peloton bike and the Peloton tread, and just wrote a glowing review of my experience right to the president, and he responded to my email. This was a case where I just spent 10 minutes and just wrote about my experience with the brand, and I was kind of shocked. I don't do that enough, but I meant it, and he's like, "Thank you."
I mean, you also dropped a couple grand on the Peloton, so like it wasn't like a
Yeah,
free
I'm
cost to
also a
acquire
power
customer.
user. Yeah, I actually sold my Peloton bike in San Francisco, and they paid the same amount that I got it for. I think I might have even made $10. So like this brand is so hot, it's even holding like an appreciating value, which is insane for an exercise bike. So
Speaking of things that are insane, Christina in chat has a friend who's a recruiter and hits up Airbnb because a lot of the hosts will list something about their profession. That is the
interesting.
most creative source of yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is absolutely wild. Yeah, so these are just some different ideas, and you can see the purpose of the webinars with each idea. It's like a master key to kick off your creative juices to like, what could I do that's really me, right? Like I was that kid in 1992 that got really into rollerblading the 1 year where it was allowed to be cool. But for like 1 year, I was like the coolest kid who was the best at rollerblading. So that might be a way you could go about it. Um, let's get even crazier, right? Cute animals. How would you caption this image, right? This is my whole style. I present someone with a pattern interrupt and then I ask a question about it, which is so meta. It's like a fourth wall tactic. There's one thing to do something and like engage on the topic, but there's another thing to do something and turn the camera and say, "What do you think of this?" Like I always think of the stickers on the back of cars, "How's my driving?" Like I always kind of want to call and be like, "I'm behind one of your cars and I just wanted to comment that the driving's it's pretty solid." Has anyone ever just been compelled to call a "How's my driving" sticker?
I'd like to say I have, but
You
not
have?
not for the same reason. Not to say they were excellent.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So, yeah, so this is hilarious because cute animals work. I remember contacting James Bodden many years ago. He said, "I've got the secretive technique, you know?" So I first got to know him. He's like, it was like Poto, the ferret. He'd send like a little ferret in a sweatshirt. And it, like, it was just such a cute little animal. In fact, I found this documentary called Too Cute, and all it does is like, it's footage of um, Spanish water dog puppies learning to swim. And you just like watch that for 10 minutes. And then it goes to the next group of puppies. It's just like the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life. It's just addictively cuteness, right? So in this case, caption this image. And I've done this and I've gotten some hilarious things back. Does anyone in the chat have a caption for this image?
Yeah, and while we're waiting on that, would you so subject line, I'm trying to picture this. So chat first, let me know. How would you caption this? Those got to be ferrets or ancient fluffy dinosaurs, whatever that is. So and tactically, Justin, so does the subject line say caption this and then it's just a picture?
Yeah, it could be. So later, so again with deliverability, you're like in a sequence and it's all like really relevant. It's relevant, and relevant. Okay, that works. And you're just sort of like not connecting. You're in later touches. You're trying to bump this or get somebody re-engaged. And this is where the breakup email, you would be traditionally you would say, okay, option one, you got eaten by a crocodile. Option two, an armoire fell on you. Option three, you're abducted by space aliens. And like everyone in the world sent that message in 2013. And then it was played out.
Yeah.
Well, now you get some kind of like freakishly cute, odd, strange thing, and you just send the picture and you're like, I know this has nothing to do with the sequence, but is this thing on? Like, how would you caption it? Right. I do a lot. So in Sandler, there's something called being less okay than they are. As you get better and better in your role and more of a subject matter expert, you don't listen as much and you can just kind of flex and show off because like mobile analytics. The problem is the customer doesn't want that. They want to know more than you. And so we started to flip that. I did a meeting once. I was with at the number 3 at AOL, and I walked into the coffee area and I bungled. I just like flipped over the coffee, spilled it all over myself, and I just laughed, and I just looked like such like I think he was like, "How does this guy have a job?" And it was like I got picked as a preferred vendor because I was just trying to show him that I wasn't okay, that I wasn't polished, that I wasn't perfect. I exposed flaws in my solution, right? So I think that humanization is really interesting. And so I don't think the goal should be to show off how much more you know than the prospect. It's more like to add some value and be human, be real. Todd Capone wrote about this, the 4.2 star factor. Like 5 stars is, I'm a little worried. They have 5 stars. Like nobody ever, but 4.2, you're kind of in this zone of credibility. So I think being funny, being candid, um, at scale, I tested grammar problems. A bad grammar, ugly text performs higher. Aaron Ross used to write only all in lower caps. I've
Oops.
tested emails that look more like poems. They convert higher. Broken sentences, non-punctuation, bad grammar, misspelling, all convert higher.
100%. And you even get some hate mail if you don't punctuate or if you write in upper caps, lower caps, no camel case whatsoever, but it's a response rate.
I've even set a meeting where I called the person by the wrong name, and last week on my mastermind, I called somebody on the phone, got his name wrong, his company wrong. Turns out he's the CEO of a different company. My data was bad, and I said, "Well, how can I help you?" He says, "Call me Friday." So I literally closed him as a totally wrong prospect, basically using the technique. I was like, "Look at me." I'm like, "Where are you?" Well, this was another guy, but he's like, "I'm on my boat." And so I said, "Well, I'm obviously on a Friday, I'm making a cold call and you're on a boat. So can you just help me in life? Like, how do I get where you are?" And he laughed and he's like, "You got to get old." I'm like, "I'm 40." Like, "No, you got to get old. Then you get the boat." I was like, "That's quite wise." So, I mean, he loved that I shredded myself and I didn't sit there and try to like persuade. I just sort of just threw myself on the sword. And that the reason this comes under cute animals is because this is like people have these perceptions that if you're calling fintech or pharma or big banking or big industry, that these people are somehow like these conservative people. They're all real people. B2B needs a mullet, business on the front, party on the back. That's what we need to do to be effective in COVID. How am I doing on time?
Good. We got about 15 minutes left. Just want to highlight, where was it? Mark was just joining. Mark was saying, oh, I missed it. Hang on. All right, I'll come back to it. I'll find it. I wanted to highlight. There's a couple good quotes there. But I think the winning caption that everybody agrees on was Emmanuel's reply back, or I'll use these for field goal practice. Your call. And then,
I love
a
it.
little bit dark and a little cold blooded. Love it,
So
Emmanuel,
good.
winner. The
That's
comment,
really good.
comment I wanted to highlight was, I would maybe just not. I'm like they're wearing sweaters, like they've had enough. Put them out of their misery. Mark's highlight for Mark is vulnerability is the real pattern interrupt. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark's been in my audience on some cold calls and had some really good feedback, realistic feedback. And there's a lot of ways to approach these things. I want to talk about just bespoke gifting. Now, this is not quite as crazy, but it's actually, I interviewed a very high level prospect who was an advisor to a company where I was advising. And I said, what would it really take? Like, you've actually run these $50 million budgets and been in charge. Like, this guy had the top e commerce company in the world, and he basically got to spend all the money on Facebook ads. And I said, "What would it take?" He said, "I don't need another dinner. I have fancy vendor dinners every night. I don't need another this or that." He said, "Donate on my behalf. Like, find out that I want to help the ACLU and make a donation and send that to me." And I'd find that so different and cool because it shows that that I'm not motivated by the money and that I do, like if you think of the millennial generation and their motivation by the culture and what the brand stands for. So again, if you look on Facebook at the causes they support, or you look at the charities, a lot of times they have on their LinkedIn profile that um, they were on the board of the Boys and Girls Club, or they're part of the World Wildlife Fund, or the causes they support, and you just make a little donation, $10, $20 to go help the sea turtles or help the dogs and cats or whatever it is, whatever you can see they like, it goes a long way. So this is a very inexpensive way to show that you care. That's kind of the donate on your behalf. What I'm thinking is, what would you give someone that is so memorable they'll never forget you? That's what you think. Like, what would you yourself get? And this isn't the golden rule. This is the platinum rule. Because if somebody just brought me Korean barbecue, all I could eat, like I would love them forever. But someone else might be a vegetarian and not like Korean barbecue, right? So you got to think about what they want. The platinum rule. The Venmo. This was one that I guess it backfired a little, but I won't tell you who did it. But someone in my mastermind did the Venmo. Just on a Sunday in the evening, you just deliver like a high-end bottle of scotch. You just deliver it. Now you need to have their address, their home address, their business address. So this is a little tricky, but so this might be someone in funnel or someone and but I mean, I guess someone would really appreciate that. Season tickets, that's a big one. I would just say maybe like you had said, just get like some hockey tickets one time. Another cool one is buying a whole person's team lunch. So if you have a consensus cell and you're selling seat-based software like CRM or Slack or Zoom, and you find that they have a team of 30, well, instead of getting one gift for the leader, why don't you just get them all like a buffet lunch or something cool you could deliver to the office? Now, obviously, that's advice pre Corona, but that's the thinking is a distributed gift where everybody gets a little something versus, that hierarchical, we're just going to go at the leader. Yeah, so these are a little bit more calm, I think. I don't think these are wingsuit or base jump level, but they still work really well. You could get someone a jersey made in their favorite player and then put their name on the back, or you could go to their college, like a lot of people I've seen from the Bruins here in SoCal or USC, and you just get them like a great player or a player from their era and their year with that number and then them on the back. That's where you're taking it to the hyper level, right? Takes a little research. It just takes a level of effort. All this stuff is like one step more effort and a little bit of money, but the conversion rates are just wild. That's what I've got. One more. With any I still have 10 minutes. The next one's really good. Any, questions in the chat?
There's one, yeah, from Charlie Moss. So, Justin, what is your favorite neuroscience article, white paper, book, or blog?
Yeah, I read a lot on neuroscience. I'm a big fan of Dr. Robert Cialdini, Persuasion and Persuasion, the follow-up. I'm also a huge fan of Dave Hoffeld. He went and did the work for us. The guy put out one book called The Science of Selling, and it's an opus. I don't know how well known he is, but he spent 10 years of his life compiling all these research studies, and you read the book, and it's just glorious, and it's not enough people are reading. It's a red book, Science of Selling, and I love it. So those would be my two that I like to read. There's another one on artificial intelligence that I read called Machine Platform Crowd. It's a little off the subject, but talks about AI and ML in context of neuroscience and brain mimicking through neural nets. So that's some light reading I like to do. In my spare time between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Uh,
thinking fast and slow. If you're gonna go Cialdini, you got to go thinking fast and slow as well. Amos
good one.
Tversky and
Yeah,
Daniel Kahneman.
good one. What about on the line from our illustrious hosts? Sarah, what do you think?
For neuroscience reading, oh my goodness, I haven't done any particularly neuroscience focused reading, but now I have to add all these books that you guys mentioned to my reading list, and then I'll make my own educated guess after that.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot. There's one called Emotional Intelligence, which is a good one. I think somebody correct me on that. It's Daniel Gelman. I'm going to get their name wrong, but he's sort of the father of neuro-linguistic programming, not to be confused with NLP, natural language processing, which is a facet of the new systems that can translate in course, that can read what you're saying in real time and get analytics from it. So let's move on to the last slide. This is real. I'm not going to tell you which company, but a rep sitting to my left who was an SDR flamed up and just like, it's like, who was formerly a financial analyst, and he's like, sales isn't for me, quits his job. But on the last day of work, the last email he sent to his biggest prospect, he sends the lyrics of What Mean from Justin Bieber. And I just want to like read them out loud because it's so funny. Um, You're so indecisive. What am I saying? Trying to catch the beat. Make up your heart. Don't know if you're complaining. Like and it's so funny. I've had people actually. Alex Lowe took the lyrics to Ice Ice Baby and turned it B2B. I've seen people like really do it cool, but in this case, yeah, it was just the lyrics. And so the prospect absolutely loved it. Week later comes back, this is hilarious. And it closed, and it was a massive close. It was like a massive over like, dozens of seats deal. And it just became, and the thing went viral. I was in a company that had thousands of reps, and it just ricocheted across the world inside. And so I just call this the Bieber close, or yeah, effectively the Bieber breakup email. I guess to spend the rest of it, I mean, there's just some pretty exotic stuff you could all be doing that you're probably not, and that's video drops. Inside the LinkedIn app, if you go to the message tab, there's a square and you can send a video hosted on LinkedIn. You don't need Vidyard, BombBomb, or Dub. You can literally just leave videos for people after hours if you don't want to disturb them at dinner. Um, I would encourage everyone on this call to get all of their prospects mid-funnel into WhatsApp. There's only 20 million users of WhatsApp, but in Tel Aviv, 100% of the business community, 100% runs on WhatsApp. And the reason that you want these real-time interfaces is because LinkedIn is still asynchronous and email is asynchronous. And so I'm watching these sellers, and they're on these open threads with 6, 7 people and these big proposals going and these big quotes and agreements. And they're doing that, and I've got all of them in real time chat, and I'm going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and I'm making months of progress in minutes. And so even that to me is a base jump. Like, if you have a deal in the pipe and it's warm and you've met they trust you, like, go into the B2C areas and connect with them and start to interact. And you'll see that it just lowers the friction. Instead of them writing this hair trigger email where they have to negotiate and all formal, they can shoot you a note like, "Hey, we can't really do 50 grand. Can you do 43 grand?" And instead of having to wait for weeks to see that $7,000 delta, you can start negotiating, figuring it out. So I just think it's worth, like, a lot of the B2C stuff is really B2B now, and that's the biggest piece of my work. It's My work is all about 80s science fiction, 80s music, and business to business. That's what I'm trying to do. And it's not my own, right? I was actually at Dreamforce, and it was 9 a.m. in the morning, and I'm drinking my Starbucks coffee, and I'm tired from the night before. And Huey Lewis jumps up, Power of Love. There's a
Yeah.
DeLorean. I'm like, what's going on here? I love this. Sean Penn stands up. I'm just like, this is like, I just died and went to heaven. Tony Robbins walks in. I'm like, this is just melt your face off levels. I mean, I can't. I was like ecstatic. I couldn't even handle it. But I guess everything we're talking about on here, if you think of Uncle Mark and the stunts that Mark Benioff pulls off at Dreamforce, it's the same level, right? Or the award shows. But you just until you saw this webinar, you thought, I can't afford that. I can't shock and awe and be differentiated and do this stunning content. I'm not gonna be able to afford to get the buy-in. I think there's budgets that are open for this. So I just want to open up for questions here at the end of the webinar. And how can I help bring some of these lofty concepts into reality?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it'd be interesting to hear from you guys if any of these examples that Justin has given here have inspired you to try something on your own. Tell us what that thing is that you're going to give a go. Maybe it's not exactly something, but as Justin said, his whole kind of purpose with this webinar has been to inspire you guys to think outside of the box with your prospecting. So give us some ideas. What are you trying? We had Zeal who actually brought up one example of a bespoke gift that he gave. Sounds like it was kind of a customer success rather than a cold prospecting type of gift. But it was to a company owner who had turned 60. They hadn't spoken to him in over 18 months. But his marketing manager was spending over 100K per year with them. So, as a customer success gift, knowing that he had a sports background, they personally photoshopped and signed a photo manipulation of him being a boxing champ with in the ring and with his marketing manager and this guy Zeal as the ref. And so yeah, wonderful example of just like totally catering to this person's likes and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, give us those examples, they're so great. We've had a ton of great engagement here in the YouTube live chat, people all chiming in on giving those ferrets the best the
Yep, no
best
ferrets were harmed
subject line.
here. Yep, no ferrets were harmed in this webinar. What I will say is I have been building an entire career on this concept, and I want to empower you to do this. And I'm inspired by predictable revenue. I'm inspired by the crew and what they're putting out, and I'm really excited to hear about the new predictable revenue model. Are there any other questions or anybody challenging this method? I mean, this is going to get widely aired because of the great distribution that the site has, so it'll be on replay to show friends.
Mhm.
Is there anything more tactically or how to do it where someone has questions?
Yeah, Zeal actually had one question just actually around that the ferret picture. Is your actual method that you're asking the prospect to caption it, or do you caption it yourself? That's what he's wondering, just the tactic there.
Yeah, I would just maybe send a picture, and then in it I'll add, with a Venn diagram, I'll use a text and then put the Venn. I'm trying to keep the sizes small, like a PNG file that's under 50 kilobytes, under 100 kilobytes,
Mhm.
because pictures are harsh if they're big, but if they're very small, there's less risk of deliverability problems.
There you go. Anybody else in the next few minutes? If you come up with anything, throw it in that chat. If not, you can ask Justin in the Slack community. If you're shy, if you haven't thought of it yet, we'll be there for the next 15 minutes or so that those questions can be answered. But yeah, bear in mind that this is your kind of last chance to ask the real deal how it's done before the whole world has access to this knowledge and
Yeah.
yeah,
So
take
I
that
just want to point
opportunity.
out, like, I think one of the biggest things is like, how will I get the budget and how will I get the buy-in? When you have your QR, you're close with your manager, your SDR leader, your chief revenue officer. That's where I think it's totally fair game to say, hey, I want to try some things that are out of the box here. can I get your buy-in to do it? I've had a very large corporation sponsor me on sending FedExes like at scale. I've had mobile companies sponsor me on using Cameo techniques, and I've worked for some really fun pirate ships where people have a great sense of humor and find this tasteful and fun. We all want to have a good time. Let's just end here with crowdsourced content. Um, okay. Uh, Sandra Kirby says, I'm totally taking these to my sales director. Yay. Zeal Caden, IIRC. On that lead, we also sent custom tumblers from his alma mater off of Etsy when they were in pipeline. So this is wonderful. Um, wow. Okay, one more from Zeal. We already read that one. Yep. So yeah, I think Oren Klaff, Pitch Anything, was recommended as a book, as another book to read. Look, I am trying to amplify your genius. Like Aaron Ross says, you each have a unique genius, and we need to find that, and we need to find the way that we prospect that reflects our unique genius. I have met people that don't have to ever call, and I have people that you can't stand email, and I have people that have set all their meetings in social media, and I even know people that have used the selling to Vito, the very important top officer, Tony Parinello, to do this FedEx sending, which I want to credit back to Tony in the 90s. And they've done all their C-level by sending these envelopes. And someone wants to know about my base jump fantasy. Well, first I'd have to get over my afraid of heights and death, because if I jumped out of a plane, I think I would lose it. Roller coaster, I had a Danish friend who just said he's like, you're so soft. And so finally we were crossing Vegas. I was like, really? And I went on the biggest wooden coaster. And I didn't black out, but I was pretty scared and discombobulated. That big wood coaster, I didn't handle it well. I gotta be honest.
That's fair, man. I'd say a roller coaster is like 10x more scary than jumping out of an airplane. With the jumping out of an airplane, the scariest moment is when you're in the plane and the door opens and there's about a 10-second little butt wiggle with somebody strapped to your back to get to the edge of the plane. And then once your feet are dangling out the plane and you lean forward, it's like a shot of adrenaline, and then you're floating. And it is the greatest experience.
I gotta say, it's why I still really like Tom Cruise, because he does his own stunts. Like he's like, okay, we're gonna do
Pretty cool.
Mission Impossible. I wanna jump out of like a massive plane that's like it's like a little too high, so I need to have oxygen, and then we're gonna like film it 25 times at vomit comet levels, like in 0 G's. You want to do it? And it's like, yeah, I'm down. So something about Tom Cruise's willingness to do that, that's super cool. I think he'd be a great prospector. That's my opinion.
I think you'd make an incredible sales leader. Zeal's asking here, hey, how is tell me more about the cameo.com piece.
Yeah, I'm happy to. You have to wait usually 1 to 3 days. There's certain celebrities that get on reserve because they're too big and you can't get them. So you kind of have to come up with 4 or 5 that work, get it approved by your company. If you're not on a pirate ship, if you're past the B round, I would suggest you play this content for your boss and your marketing team and legal. Trust me, 'cause some of it's pretty risque, a little bit Silicon Valley, and they might be cool with that, right? It's just like the same, like a company could host an electronic music nightlife party, but you got to make sure they're cool. You don't want to send something inflammatory to a very, strict conservative audience where they could be upset. So know your audience. If you literally see someone who's a huge Chappelle fan or loves Seinfeld, and you can line it up and there's high propensity, I just wouldn't assume you've got the green light. It's better to do a consensus with all these things, because I'm just covering myself and my indemnity, because I don't need to say, well, Justin Michael told me to send Flavor Flav videos to all my prospects. I'm expensing it. You $5,000. Like, please, please, please be cool.
Okay, there's a question here from Graham Locklear as well. Justin, what designer did you use for your root ruin multiply doc? That's the greatest gift of all, to Graham.
Oh, you're so nice. And I should know who this is. I released all my methods from my whole life for $10. I'm a Radiohead fan. I love open source. I work for Sean Parker, so I'm not making a political statement with it. But I released my calling and email techniques along with a Patreon and a Discord server. I have a gamification server. Imagine Slack, where you can drop in live and listen to me cold call, and we do teardowns of emails. It's never been done in the history of the world, and I've got about 150 people in there. It should go really fast. Who graphic designed it? It was done in Canva. It's all pretty much templates. I'm a low budge operation right now. I people who support me generate these things for me. Awesome. I'm very grateful.
We're getting lots of good comments in here about about that doc. Sounds awesome.
I'll send it to you. It's pretty crazy. there was two versions, and one looks like the Castlevania cheat codes. It's like, crazy video game document, but then we did like an angelic version, which was like very much like The Alchemist with like flowing. I did these two versions just to see how it would go. Um, Discord server details. I mean, is it okay to self promote here? Or we're at end of
Yeah.
the hour.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, go for it.
So I put 75 people in a WhatsApp and we broke the internet. I mean, we would have like 3 straight hours of people talking about their top 5 hip hop artists. And I'd be like, okay, everyone, are we going to talk about sales? There was no way to control it because WhatsApp got crazy. I'd go in at 5,000 missed messages. I'm like, wow, this is like Lady Gaga's fan base here at this point. So we put it in a Discord server. I got a social media expert that I hired as a coach. Her name is String Win, shameless plug. She gets 1 million views per post. So I just said, String, if you can get me 1 million views on a post, name your price. Name your price. Because if I get 1 million views, I get 100,000 views. That's like 10x. So we built the Discord, and it's all sort of an Iron Man theme, right? And then we kind of pivoted because we can't have the Disney, the mouse on our back, and so now it's just sales Borgs, which I don't think is truly Star Trek. It's just really a cyborg and a sail. It's very strange. Like so,
Yeah.
yeah. There's 150 people in this thing going nuts day and night on all the zones. It's like a video game for B2B. It's never been done. If you want to get into it, it's my entire life's work for $10. People say it's worth $11.
That's incredible value there. Love the little pattern interrupt there. It's like we're all expecting you to say thousands, and beautiful. Yeah, if you got all the details, send it our way. We'll make sure it ends up in our Slack. I know it's a bit ironic to throw the Discord link in Slack, but that's where everybody will see it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more planted than just the comments here.
Awesome.
And BJ is
I'll
saying
jump
it's
in
definitely
Slack
worth
later.
$17.39.
Wow, that's good to know. Wow, I'm increasing my stocks going up.
Jeez.
I have to go to another call if that's okay. It's classic. I have a hard stop in
Hard
these
stop.
uncertain times. But love y'all and love predictable you. And I'm like, I can't wait to see what Aaron Ross will do next. Excited just to see what the team does. So thanks for having me today and entertaining my madness. And every genius is a touch of madness. So close with that.
Poetic.
Anonymous.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Thanks,
Great
Justin.
having you.